I'm going to be sharing how I did some tip-to-tip blending with the Olo Marker and Scrapbook.com exclusive marker set. Hey crafty friends, it's Joy here. Now, I was talking about this marker set that's an exclusive with scrapbook.com from Olo Markers. So you cannot get this set anywhere else. And these, if you've never used Olo Markers before, they come in these little small pieces, but you can hook them together within a color family or however you want to put your markers together. So you have these little pieces. I'm going to screw it into one end and then you can screw the other marker into the other end. Super simple, super easy. A lot of times I will have a color family that maybe has 3 colors in it that I chose. And so one of them will be small and it still is fine to hold it that way. And then the other 2 colors, I will have a full size marker. So that's kind of how I do mine. And then there's like a clear blending marker that helps you blend your color. I'm going to be using for the first time their marker blending cardstock. I've not ever used it before, so I'm excited to use that. Again, you can only get this color combination at scrapbook.com, but they're also selling other marker packs at scrapbook.com. So I am so excited about this because I have Olo markers in my stash and that is just fantastic. Okay, so on that cardstock, I am going to stamp my sunflower image from the Sunflowers stamp set from scrapbook.com. I'm going to use black ink. I'm using Honeybee Stamps Intense Black ink to ink up my image. I'm going to stamp this a couple times to get a really nice, good image because this is the first time I've stamped this sunflower. There's tons of sunflowers in this stamp set. It's such a pretty stamp set. My idea was like, I just want one. I want to concentrate on one on my card design and then we'll have some other like die cut background pieces and pattern paper. I really quick wanted to show you all the colors you get in that set. Look at how pretty they are. I love these. I'm going to be using from this set O 1.3, Y 1.1, and YG 2.3. I'm going to show you how to do the tip-to-tip blending. So I have an orange and a yellow. So right now I'm using the orange, which is the O 1.3. I'm going to add that to the base of my flower petals because I want that to be a little bit darker. Then the yellow is going to be the tips of my petals, but how are we going to get that color in between if you don't have an in-between color? Well, we're going to do the tip-to-tip blending with our Olo markers. It is so simple. So I'm going to take that lightest marker, which is my yellow, that is the Y 1.1. I'm going to rub it on the tip of the orange marker, and depending on how much you rub, you're going to get more or less. So you can rub and then keep coloring like I did here a few more petals before I take it to that other tip again and add more color to it. So it really kind of depends, and you have control, which is really awesome, of how light or dark you are going to create that color. So in this instance, we're creating that bridge color, the medium color between the orange and the yellow that we're going to make. Look at how easy this is. Look at how beautiful this is turning out. It's so simple. So even if you got yourself a handful of colors, you could do this tip-to-tip blending. It does not ruin the tips on your marker. See, I'm going to come over to the scratch piece of paper and rub off that excess, and now all I have left is yellow on that marker. So super simple. So let's take that yellow and then blend out at the tips. So now we have a dark, a medium, and a light color. We bridged between the yellow and the orange, which is perfect. And it was so simple and easy to do. What a neat technique, you guys, this tip-to-tip blending. So I'm going to finish coloring with that yellow. And then if you see more areas, which I do, I'm going to do more of that tip-to-tip blending. And again, depending on how many times you swipe your lighter color across your darker color, that's gonna determine how light or dark that color is. Okay, so I'm cleaning off my yellow marker. It's perfect. I'm gonna go back in with that orange, add a little bit darker at the base. of those petals, but look at how pretty that is. So super simple. So now I'm also going to bring in some Olo markers from my stash. I'm using the YG 2.3, which is a green. Now I also have that in my stash with some other colors. So I'm going to use the YG 2.3 that comes in that exclusive pack at scrapbook.com. I'm going to use a companion color to that, which is YG 2.1 and YG 2.5. Then I'm going to, for the centers, also use RG 3, 5, and 6. So you can see here I'm just adding a little bit more, refining my color there, or just tapping it one time on my orange tip and then coloring quite a few petals with that because it lasts a little bit on the tip of the yellow marker. And then don't forget to clean it off when you're all done. Okay, so I'm going to use the YG 2.3 that came in the set, and then the YG 2.1 and the 2.5. So that would be what I would call a little color family. So you have kind of like a light, a medium, and a dark. So here's the 2.3, and then I will use the 2.1 to give a really nice shade. So you can see here, this is how I built my markers, where I have medium and dark together, and then my lightest color is by itself, if that makes sense. And then again, for the centers, I'm going to use a kind of a brownish gray. So RG 3, 5, and 6. So again, here I'm building this one. I have my darkest by itself, and then I will come in with the medium and the lightest. It's going to follow some of that shading that's already there from the stamp set itself. And then that medium color, and then our lightest color. And I think I might go through it one more time, which is usually what I tend to do. I feel like I get the look that I am going for when I go through it twice. But that's just a personal preference. It just however you liked your images to look when you're done. So pretty. Let me go back in one more time. I'm going to add some other little details. Once it kind of dries, I feel like you can really see if you need something somewhere else. I'm going to highlight some of those little stamped lines, giving that more detail with that darker orange marker, the O 1.3. And then a little bit darker here at the base of some of those leaves. Okay, beautiful. I love it. Let's get the rest of this card together. I am using the Nested Stitched Labels dies. I've got the small one here. I'm going to die cut out that flower. And then you can see a larger one to my right. I'm going to use that on the Ginghams patterned paper. And isn't that gingham so pretty? I totally went fall for this card. Absolutely went fall for this. I had this paper pad and I just thought this is so pretty. And then I pulled out the spiced cardstock, and I think that's where I got that brown one from. And then for the sentiment that I'm going to die cut as well. So we're going to kind of layer these together. I felt like the cardstock was a little too white, so I'm going to use Vintage Photo Distress Oxide ink and my little sponge dauber that fits on my finger, and I'm going to go around. I'm not going to go over the flower where I colored, but I am going to just age up this white cardstock. It just was a little too white for what I was going for. I did add Vintage Photo to this, and it does add a nice little detailed edge to it, but I think I come back over it with Gathered Twigs because it wasn't quite dark enough for me, and you definitely couldn't see the Vintage Photo on that piece of colored cardstock. So I went and grabbed my Gathered Twigs, and I'm going to be using that because that is definitely going to show up on this background. So let me grab that little sponge dauber. And then that is so much better. I think that looks really, really pretty. Just giving it a quick distressing aging around the edges of that cardstock. And then I will do that for that same for this one because it just wasn't dark enough. I feel like this was absolutely perfect. Then we're going to do some splatter, of course, because why not? Ooh, isn't that pretty? Oh yeah, I'm loving that. I think that turned out really nice. So let's do splatter I think I'm going to start with Vintage Photo. And I think it might be the only one I used. We'll see. I'm going to splatter everywhere. I'm trying not to get too much onto the flower itself. And I want some bigger drops. I'm not trying to do a bunch of tiny little drops. I kind of want more of that bigger look. Yep, I do gathered twigs. I'm going to do a little bit of that as well. Just the tiniest bit. Again, I don't want it to be over splattered, but I definitely want some of that. And I'm kind of going around the edges on these die cut pieces because you're not going to see the center. So then I die cut the word thanks from the Hello Bloom die set. I die cut that 3 times from that Spice cardstock and from this green. It's such a deep, dark green. I wanted to bring out the green in that gingham pattern paper. So I die cut that 3 times. I'm going to glue that together. That's going to give us a nice dimensional sentiment without having to worry about adding foam adhesive behind it. Because some of these, I mean, I feel like you could get some foam adhesive behind this sentiment, but if you don't want to deal with that of having to cut tiny little pieces and getting it to fit, just cut your sentiment, depending on the thickness of your cardstock, 2 to 4 times is what I would say. Okay, 1 millimeter foam adhesive went behind that piece. 1 millimeter foam adhesive is going to go behind this piece. I'm going to pop that right in the center. Then we have our sentiment that's going to go across, and I'm just going to use some liquid glue to adhere that down because, again, like we were just talking about, the sentiment itself already has some dimension because we glued 3 layers. I did 3 layers of this. I feel like you probably could have got away with 4 layers because that colored cardstock is a little bit on the thinner side. Then I'm roughing up the edges with my scissors just a little bit, and I did trim this down about 1/4 inch smaller, and it is adhered to a white A2 size card base. And this is done. I think it turned out so pretty, and that tip to tip blending with the Olo markers was so easy to do. I hope you guys enjoyed this project. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you guys have an amazing day.